Free from the antics and the temper tantrums of a disgrace, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, and liable for sexual abuse ex-president, the E. Jean Carroll defamation trial dealt with a very important question today. How much should one of the world's most powerful men pay for his dangerous and defamatory rhetoric? E. Jean Carroll was back on the stand today, first under cross-examination by Trump's attorney, Alina Habba, then under redirect examination by her attorney, Roberta Kaplan. Team Trump suggested that Carroll actually benefited from her accusation. ABC News reports the defense has suggested that Carroll craved attention, took on Trump to revive her flagging career, and relished the verdict in an earlier trial, known as Carroll 2, that established Trump was liable for sexually abusing and then defaming her. Did the Carroll 2 verdict, in your opinion, provide you with bigger status in New York? Habba asked. It provided me with enormous elation, Carroll responded. Habba pressed her, quote, "You've continued to publicize every lawsuit you had against President Trump." Yes, Carroll responded, because I wanted people to know that a woman can speak up and win a trial. I wanted people to know. I'm 80. I don't want to be quiet. It's not right to make a woman be quiet. It has gone on for too long. During redirect, Carroll countered that despite all the notoriety she gained after she accused Trump of sexual assault, she wants nothing more than to get her life back. From ABC, quote, "Would you prefer to have the reputation you have now with all those Twitter followers or the reputation you had before June 2019? Carroll's attorney, Roberta Kaplan, asked. "Before," Carroll responded. On the stand after E. Jean, expert witness professor Ashley Humphreys. CNN reports that she testified that, quote, "It could cost up to $12.1 million to implement a campaign that could change these strongly held attitudes of people who likely believe Trump." Humphrey said her analysis found the damage of Trump's statements at issue in this case was severe to her, Carroll's reputation as a journalist, and the costs to repair it are considerable. And that is where we start today with former top prosecutor at the Department of Justice, Andrew Weissmann. He was in the courtroom for most of today. Plus, First Amendment scholar and senior visiting research fellow with Columbia University, Ronell Anderson-Jones, and host of the podcast Fast Politics, Molly Jong-Fast. She's also a special correspondent for Vanity Fair. Andrew, let's start with you. You were in the room today. What did you make of E. Jean Carroll on the stand?
You know, she's a very effective witness. And just remember that in this trial, the judge has instructed the jury that her allegation that she was sexually assaulted and defamed are no longer just allegations. They are facts that the jury has to accept. So as you mentioned, Alicia, in your opening, this is really about damages and the amount of damages. And I would just try and divide that into different buckets of damages that E. Jean Carroll is talking about. There's emotional damages, that is the effect on her of 2 statements made by Donald Trump while he was president of the United States. I stress that because that is what E. Jean Carroll has pointed to as how much more harm there is to her when it's coming from somebody who is the sitting president of the United States. Then there's reputational damage. That is something that you alluded to also in your opening. And then finally, there's punitive damages. So they're all different aspects of types of damages. And my big takeaway from the defense tack in this case is basically saying you brought this all on yourself by coming forward. It was quite remarkable in this day and age to have this sort of, you know what? You should have just kept quiet and then you wouldn't have had anything to complain about. And that's simply not the law. And I would hope that for the women and men on the jury, that is soundly rejected as an argument.
Right. Ronell, that argument feels so dissonant from the moment that we find ourselves in. Here's some more reporting from what happened today. This is during redirect. Quote, regarding the tweets Carroll received after she went public, but before Trump's denial, Carroll's attorney asked her, did any of those tweets accuse you of being a paid Democratic operative? No, Carroll responded. Did any of those tweets threaten your life? Her attorney asked. No, Carroll said. Did any of those tweets say you should be in jail? Her attorney asked. No, Carroll answered. Did any of those tweets say you should be raped? Her attorney asked. No, Carroll replied. You see what they're doing there. It sort of gets to the heart of the matter. Trump's remarks, they then led to a unique an unbelievable level of vitriol against E. Jean Carroll. Rinal.
Yes, and this is part and parcel of what we see as the overall theme that Trump's lawyers seem to be embracing in this case, which is this theme of minimizing. So they've, in the portion that you just described, are trying to minimize the role that Trump had in other people's harassment of E. Jean Carroll, suggesting that some of those folks lashed out against Carroll before the president told his lie. Carroll, in response, quite strongly pushed back and said the character of the accusations and the graphic, violent nature of them was different in kind and not just in degree after the president told this public defamatory falsehood. They have also tried to minimize the reputational harm in the ways that you described in the opening, trying to suggest that her reputation was either previously poor or that it somehow benefited financially, reputationally, or otherwise from the publicity that surrounded President Trump's lie. Carroll and her team pushed back against that minimization as well, with Carroll saying at one point that her reputation was shattered, that she herself was shattered by what was said about her. Most notably, I think that their goal has been to minimize what's at stake in this case. So the framing from Trump's side of this case has been that this is just about a couple of comments that Trump made in 2019 when he was president. And that's technically true. There are only a couple of statements that are directly at issue in this particular litigation. But these jurors need to hear this wider body of information about what Trump has been doing because of the punitive damages that are being sought. Those are only appropriate for defendants who are belligerent and recalcitrant, that are really unrepentant and continue to show ill will and don't show any sign of being deterred from continuing to tell those lies. And so this wider body of material, really just a mountain of ongoing evidence that is being introduced really in real time. Just today, we saw the lawyers for Carroll had to introduce a new social media post that happened right when Trump was sitting in the room with the jury yesterday, and introduced a press conference that he gave yesterday after court adjourned. All of this sort of tsunami of ongoing information that shows this ill will, that goes directly to the question of punitive damages, shows that there's this real gap between the minimization that Trump's lawyers are trying to do in the courtroom and the maximization of damages that their client is doing outside of it.
Right, and into that gap, Molly, steps E. Jean Carroll. I wonder what you make of this idea Trump's legal team, they're pushing, that E. Jean Carroll somehow benefited from accusing Trump of sexual assault, which I would also argue has sort of a weird circular logic where if what he wanted to do was not amplify her, then perhaps he could have stopped defaming her when he was given the opportunity.
Right. So I know E. Jean Carroll. I've known her pretty well. She was friends with my mom. And she had a really good reputation in media circles as a really smart writer. She wrote an advice column, and a little bit quiet, right? It's hard for me to imagine someone less interested. You know, she made a number of decisions in her earlier career that actually kept her out of the spotlight. And the idea that at 80, she would do this in the hopes of somehow basking in the glory of being a victim doesn't jive for me at all in my mind. And in fact, I think that if you think about all the people who were scared to go against Trump, right? Think about the Republican senators who refused to vote to convict, all of the candidates who ran against him, who refused to say a bad word against him. I mean, this is a person who a lot of people are scared of. And I think that the idea that E. Jean Carroll in her 80s would delight in taking on this guy who is really famous as a bully and as a person who is quite scary and who scares a lot of people, many people, Mitt Romney, for example, had to pay for private security. I mean, it is just kind of beyond the pale that she would then do this in her 80s. And you remember she's written about this and she's talked about this. She slept with a gun under her pillow. She was quite afraid. And I think it's really worth realizing that this is a really silly kind of way to further undermine her for her brave stance.
The